Good evening and welcome to the final YouTube live show before our playoff semi-final with Torquay at Plainmoor on Saturday. And our guests are from the west of England, Arnold and Montreal, Canada tonight. Furthest away first, the one and the only Kevin J.S. Duska Jr. Gone viral after his good luck message to Notts last week. Kevin, delighted to have you.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Hey, absolute pleasure. Chloe, good to see you again. No tickets for you to sell from the Notts ticket office this week, no?
No, just hopefully and praying that there will be next week for the final.
And of course, the man with a foot in both camps, Kevin Nicholson, been on a few times on our show. We seem to be playing Torquay every few months this season. Kevin, delighted to have you back.
Evening. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, Bish sends his regards, by the way, as well.
Yeah, I'm still trying to get over the fact that I heard Neil Bishop sounding intelligent. It threw me for weeks, that did.
Greetings from our fan base, Wayne Wilkins, who is sending me loads of pictures of birds from Barcelona. And before, yeah, I can see you all looking, you know, a bit sexist because you can't be that now, Chloe. Don't worry. I am referring to our feathered little friends. Wayne, for some inexplicable reason, after we spoke about 1 for sorrow, 2 for joy, 3 for a girl, 4 for a boy, for whatever it goes, flocks of magpies and superstition, now each week sends me a video of a flock of magpies from outside his apartment in Barcelona, as you do. And as long as there's more than 2 on this video, that means good luck. And we've been winning every time he's done it. So I got another video of our feathered friends from Barcelona from Wayne this week, who is tuning in. Kian Henson can't wait till Saturday, hoping for a convincing win. Lee Brearley likewise. Liam Motson likewise. Matt Wilson. Evening, everyone. Just starting to get my voice back from Saturday. One of the best games and atmospheres I've seen down the lane for, I can't even remember. Duncan Comrie, good evening, guys. Right, Mr. Nicholson, in one of these shirts, well, not because this is only a replica, in one of these shirts, you produced one of Notts' classic goals in a Great Escape victory over Huddersfield 2 decades ago. Given where we were after the change of manager about 2 months ago, it is something of a great escape that we stand a chance of getting out of the National League this season. What's your thoughts? What's your take on all of this so far? Torquay, I'm told, can only get 1,600 in, but I'm guessing it'll still be fairly lively.
Yeah, I think 1,600 will be a good atmosphere. My take on it, I can't lie. I think we had the conversation. I thought it was a terrible decision at the time, changing manager when they did. I thought it was a really big risk for a guy that, you know, from the outside looking in, seemed pretty popular with his players, seemed to be doing okay, despite the fact I know Notts fans would have been wanting to win the league, but they were up there and they were fighting for it. You know, a little bit of inconsistency, but in the mix. When you make a change like that, I think you're asking for trouble if the manager is popular with the players. And we had that discussion when Bish was on, and I think we're all fairly in agreement. I keep an eye on stuff as it's going along. Obviously, there's a few issues with the assistant, and he went. And whether that was the catalyst for it, I don't know. It seemed to time in with that a little bit. But you've then got to give credit where it's due. The manager's got them winning. First and foremost, they've had the odd little blip, haven't they, towards the end? But generally speaking, it was a really, really good run to go into the playoffs playing well and winning games. I always think, and I'll back this. I said it last time on the show. The team that just misses out on winning the league is always on the back foot. The team that goes into those playoffs at the last minute and goes in knowing that they could have dropped out and you know, last game or two, they're the ones that go in there feeling good, confident, nothing much to lose in comparison. So my take is that they've timed it right through luck or judgment, and it'll be a hell of a game on Saturday. Every time I've doubted Torquay, when I thought they were going through a real bad patch, they've always actually plucked out a good result. and they've got experienced players in the camp. So I don't think they're going to be overawed by the occasion. It's an advantage having fans in of their own and not having any opposition fans, I'm sure. But I think not. So, I mean, what better way to go into it with a 90th minute winner, ex-Torquay player as well, Big Mark. Guy's an absolute magnet in the box, always has been. And I saw his interview; he was pumped up after. I'm terrible at predictions, but I do think that Notts have probably got the edge going into it. They've played, they've got momentum, they've not had a weekend off. I always think that's all going in their favour.
I agree with everything you've said, and I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing with you, Nico. And I'm not sure if you've got the chat section on the side when you've got that logged in, but a certain Neil Bishop 11 as he's obviously watching and listening, and says the light reflecting off your globe head, which is one of his pet nicknames for you, is mesmerising, says Bish.
It's always good to hear from Bish. Yeah, it's always good to hear from him. He hides his little bit at the back, doesn't he? But sometimes you just got to let it go, mate.
I was going to ask you, actually, we just stay with this for a minute, because Torquay up and down, and you brought up the point about being second on the back foot. Did you think, like a lot of us, that when Torquay started to come again, that they would win it rather than Sutton? I must admit, it caught me a little bit by surprise. When you're looking at, I don't know, whatever it was, 6-7 games out, I had a big fancy for Torquay at that point.
Yeah, I mean, again, it just shows you how much we all know when you're on shows like this and you're talking about things in the moment. Because I think back to the conversation we had when Bish was on, and again, I think we all fancied that Sutton were well and truly in the driving seat and that they'd probably just about get there. I fancied either Stockport or Hartlepool to come late on. Stockport particularly looked like, with Torquay to play, they had a real chance at that. And then of all teams, I think it was like Bromley who drew with Torquay at Plainmoor, and that was it seemed like the final mess up they were allowed, because then Sutton came through and took it. And I think it was great credit to Sutton, because they must have had some kind of wobble when they'd gone from so many points ahead to come back down, and it was so close to make or break. I think a huge amount of credit for them to get the job done. But yeah, I was with you. Gary Johnson's experience, Torquay's players' experience, the fact that they'd got past that bad run and gone again, I kind of fancied them to win it. So, these shows are brilliant. I love being a part of them. I love listening to them and that kind of thing. But when it comes to making predictions, like we're talking about football there, it's madness at the best of times. So we're all kidding ourselves if we think we can sit here and pull results out accurately.
Let's cross over. Let's cross the pond. The opposite way to Joe Biden is coming to land at Newquay Airport, not a million miles from you, Nico, in about 24 hours time or whatever, and all the leaders of G7 are in the West Country. Kevin J.S. Duska Jr., you're a legend among Notts fans after your video last week. Please give us all, because I know some of this, a little bit of a potted version of your affinity with Notts County, which dates back to more or less World War II and your great-grandfather, correct?
Yeah, I'm a bit of an unlikely magpie, in as much as I pretty much hated football until I was 20. But my great-grandfather was stationed near Nottingham in 43 or 44 because he was taking some kind of course, in as much as the Canadian Army was still well integrated into the British Army at the time. Then war broke out, and apparently he didn't leave until 47. And as a child, and as I told you, I did not like football. I was a hockey player, but I did very much enjoy trying to get World War II stories from my grandfather. So he'd come over every weekend and either listen to a match on the shortwave, or bring a tape that one of his mates in England had sent him. And I'd sit next to him and we'd watch it, and gradually I developed an affinity for football rather than hockey. As I went to university and met people from Europe and from the rest of the world, my own affinity for football grew tremendously. I started playing when I was 21. And the only team that I could ever develop an emotional rapport with were the Magpies, and mostly thanks to memories from childhood. So as my friends were, picking Prem teams, I was supporting a team in the 4th division.
Very good. And have you been able to get over much at all in the past decades or not?
Yeah, I went for the first time when I was in '94. I was 9 years old. I was born in '85. I was over in 17 and 18. In 18, I saw a match. Oh God, Ryan Yates had equalized it in the 93rd minute. It was crazy. Forget against whom it was. But yeah, I've seen about 6 or 7 matches live at Meadow Lane.
Very good, very good.
And I'm definitely coming next year once this pandemic is over.
Because you've had lots of offers for people to put you up, yeah, after your video last week.
I think my wife will insist upon a hotel, but the wonderful hospitality of the Knots community has been absolutely lovely. Thank you so much.
And you're able to watch the games, aren't you? Albeit we won't shout too loudly, but there are some streams that you can, shall we say, access.
Indeed, no major broadcaster has the rights here, and let's just say that there are ways to watch these playoff games. Yes.
Right, I'm sure. Yes, you're up. You had the barbecue out, didn't you, on Saturday? You had the outside barbecue out.
This past Saturday, yes. This Saturday, it's a 7 a.m. kickoff for me, so I'm literally going to be watching from bed.
Well, let's say we all get out of bed for the 12 o'clock kickoff. Chloe, you were in the ground with 4,427 or whatever it was. We all went through the mill on Saturday a bit, didn't we?
Yeah, well, I was in from 9:15, so it was a long wait to 4 o'clock. The fans outside the couple of hours before, but I tell you what, it was a stressful couple of hours. At halftime, I was kind of in the dumps. Before the game, I thought I was the only one that was quietly confident. My family thought, oh, Chesterfield's always a tricky one, bit of a bogey side. And then the anticipation kicked in, and I still thought, I think we'll be all right. And then it got to half time, and it was kind of like, I can't see it happening. I just can't. And then we had a great second half. And then, funnily enough, I turned round to my granddad because we was just behind the dugouts, and the 4th official had the 5 minutes on his board before it was going to be put up. And obviously we scored like 89, 90 minutes. And I turned around to my granddad and I said, you watch, we'll score in added time. Well, it turns out we didn't quite score in added time, but just before. But I've never seen anything like it. That as soon as that one went in, I think it was more relief than anything. I just remember seeing Ian Burchnall after the game, and we waited as they did their kind of laugh, and he came over and he went like this, and he just the biggest sigh of relief. And I think it was the same from me, but it was a great win. And for a neutral as well, because I know quite a lot of people will have been watching it because there's not a lot of football on now the Premier League's finished and we're waiting for the Euros. So all that's really on are these National League playoffs, and kind of what a promotion for the league. You've got a local derby and obviously us in Chesterfield, and then a playoff game, and then to win it in the 93rd minute. What more can you ask for? So yeah, I was delighted, to be honest.
Yeah, great memories for you in terms of representing our younger sections of the fan base as well, I think, Chloe. Nico, so there was a big debate last year in terms of the restructuring of the playoffs, so that second and third don't play the first round of them. And there was and last year, so it was ourselves against Barnet. I forget who Harrogate were playing, but there was a view, we've not played for 2 weeks, they've played the week before, there'll be more match fit, all of that. As it turned out, both second and third won. So Torquay will come into this game having not played for 2 weeks. We will be playing on the back of the victory against Chesterfield. Is there an advantage one way or t'other, or not? Is it just all those pundits chatting away?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I don't like the new playoff setup. I like that it gives more teams in this league more to play for longer, because sneaking in seventh like that will certainly, or sixth or seventh, will make it more exciting for a lot more teams. I mean, there was a time, wasn't there, where in the National League and the conference where you'd get to January and it was pretty much all over for a group of teams in the middle. So that I get, but I don't like this just playing at one ground and this break in between. I think there's nothing better than a 2-leg playoff where, we'd be having this discussion about what's most advantageous, playing at home first or away first and all that kind of thing. And I think over 2 legs, generally speaking, the better team will win. I think over 1 leg, like I say now, I think that actually the team that plays at home is under more pressure than the team that plays away. It's an easy team talk for the manager to be able to say, look, fellas, this is all against us. We're having to travel away. There's none of our fans can come, but there's going to be X amount of their fans. We finished 7th, they finished 2nd, this, that. It's a really easy, everything's against us kind of team talk. And at the same time, as much as you try and not let it affect you as the home team, you are favourites. You're at home. You finished higher. You probably should win. You got more points during the season. So by definition, you're a better team over the period of that season. I think that the psychology of it becomes massive. And I do think, like I say, Torquay are fortunate in some ways. I think that 2-week break might help them because they've had 1 or 2 injuries. So it probably gives 1 or 2 guys a chance to get themselves ready and available. But I would much prefer to be not in this situation. I'd much prefer to have fought my way through a tough game, having felt the pressure. What Chloe said there, it's like that for fans where you've got anxiety issues before the game, not knowing the game goes on, you're going up, you're going down. I think for players, it's similar. So Torquay don't know that yet. And there might be players in that camp that have never had it before. Well, every Notts County player right now has felt what it feels like to be, oh, wow, this is really going against us at half time. And we might be going into extra time, but going to the end and then scoring. So I think the psychology is in Notts' favour. But I'll go back to what I say. These things are brilliant to discuss this, but we're clueless when it comes to football because one bad tackle in minute 1, someone gets sent off, it's gone. One piece of brilliance and a goal goes in for Torquay. They're on a high. Notts County, oh my God, what's hit us? And it could go. And I've been lucky enough to play in those games, and I've been lucky enough to be on either end of that, or unlucky, depending on what way you look at it. I've experienced the worst of the worst when it comes to playoff losses, and I've been promoted through them. So they're an amazing thing, a great thing to be part of. Very, very much in the balance.
Okay, what was your worst playoff memory then?
Well, ironically, now working for Exeter, 2008, first leg of the playoffs, we went to St James's Park. I was playing for Torquay, won 2-1, got away with it a little bit. And then second leg at Plainmoor went 1-0 up, so 3-1 on aggregate. And with 20 minutes to go, they scored 3. And it just went bang, bang, bang. And it was one of those like, what's happened? It was like everything stood still. You wanted the ground to open up. We'd been brilliant all season. Exactly this kind of thing that we're talking about now. We'd just been pipped by Aldershot for the league. Probably should have won it. A couple of real simple little individual errors had cost us against Aldershot, and that had given them a bit of a cushion, and they'd gone on to confirm it. We knew we were in the playoffs, a couple of games to go, but we couldn't win the league, so it was a bit awkward. Exeter got in there, and then with 20 minutes to go, it was, now I've got the Exeter badge on and I'm working there. If I bump into Exeter fans, they're quite happy to tap me on the shoulder and have a chat about that one. Let's put it that way.
And of course, the local rivalry as well. I mean, that must have been, a pretty emotional, turbocharged night, I would have thought.
It was hell. Yeah, it was hell. I went away. We were brilliant all season. We scored stupid amount of goals. We were great to watch. We got to the final of the FA Trophy as well and lost that the week after. But up until that last week of the season, Saturday to Saturday, we were absolutely brilliant. Probably the best team I've been involved in throughout my career. But one bad week, one bad 20 minutes one week, and then one trip to Wembley that didn't go our way against Ebbsfleet, and you go away for the worst summer of your life. That's football. Those teams that you talked about, the Great Escape earlier, I went away after that year where we were terrible for 8 months, and everything went against us, and we lost loads of games. And then you have one good month, you stay up last day of the season, you go away thinking you've won the lottery. It was the best summer ever. But technically speaking, you've just been through 8-9 months of terrible football. Fans on your back, rightly so. Manager not knowing where to look. Why is this going so badly? It shouldn't do. And then one good month and you go away and it's all forgotten. So it's a crazy game. It's probably why everybody's kind of loves it and is crazy to be involved in and around it.
Kevin, out there in Montreal, are there any other Notts County converts you've managed to persuade? Are there any Torquay fans out there that you've come across, or Chesterfield fans you were able to gloat over last weekend?
The closest I can come to is a Millwall fan. That's all I've got. The Notts flag that was in my video that was at Meadow Lanes hanging from my front balcony, and people on the street are stopping and looking at it and wondering what the hell it is. So I think there's a sad degree of disconnect between what's going on in England and what's going on here in terms of football. People are just preparing for the Euros here mostly.
Presumably in Montreal, is the real passion the Canadians and the ice hockey there? Then is that the team?
Oh yes, there are even sociological journal articles that have compared the Montreal Canadiens to religion. And given that we're now in the conference semi.
Oh, I could see you were impressed with my ice hockey knowledge of the Canadiens in Montreal there, Nico. I could see that.
You must have done your homework, because the guy that works with you never got that right.
Right, we'll try to get Kevin back. Chloe, so from having worked round the clock to sell all the tickets at home, this week you haven't got any to sell, so it's a bit more considered looking ahead to Saturday. What's yours and your granddad's take on all of this, preparing for Saturday? I mean, you couldn't have been put through the mill any more than you were at the weekend. Kev's had analysed it, if you like. They finished above us. Do you think our name's on it this year after Saturday? What's your thoughts?
Funnily enough, I've thought, kind of echoing exactly what Kev said, in the whole, I think the pressure's kind of off us. I really do. You saw, don't get me wrong, the Notts fans were behind them all game, and I think that drove them on to win it in the second half, because from minute one, the crowd was as loud as I've probably heard it. And I've seen a pretty much a full Meadow Lane, and it sounded just as full on Saturday, even though there was only about 4.5 of us. But that didn't really hinder Chesterfield. They still managed to score 2 goals against us. I think probably it did push us in the end, with it being literally one of the last minutes of the game. But we're going there. We are the underdogs, and I quite like being the underdogs. I've always been supporting Notts, the underdog side. And yeah, it's pressure on them massively. And all we can do is go and play our game. And we've just got to play for ourselves. We've got one thing to concentrate on. And just the pressure might get to them, and that might help us. But like you say, you can never predict. But it's definitely going to be a nervy one. But I'm so glad that this is a 12 o'clock kickoff, because the 4 o'clock was far too much on my nerves to wait that long. So at least it'll be over in the day. And then we've got England the next day. So if the worst does happen, it's forgotten about quickly, hopefully, if then England go on to win. So yeah, it shouldn't be too much of a long wait this time.
Yeah, not sure I'll forget about it too quick, but anyway. Nico, Mark Ellis. So he's already become a bit of a ledge since his loan spell, arrival from Tranmere. Remarkable goal scoring return. But we've spoken a little bit about this before. You know him quite well. Talk to us then about his goal scoring ability, 1, and 2, what's he like as a character? Because you had him at Torquay, yeah?
Yeah, no, I played with him at Torquay when he was coming through as a young lad. There are certain players that just have a knack of being right place, right time when the ball goes in the box. Somebody like at Torquay, we had Tim Sills. Whenever you put the ball in there, it just seemed to be on his head. We had Guy Branston, who I know had a bit of time at Notts, who was very similar, albeit his head was absolutely huge, so it was easier to spot. Mark Ellis is very much of that ilk, and at both ends. He's one of those all-action type defenders. I can see why he becomes a fan favourite, because he'll tackle through a wall, he'll never stop running, he's all action. He can be a bit ungainly and a bit ugly to watch at times in how he goes about it, but he'll never, ever give up. He's always had a really, really good attitude. He came through. He learned the hard way. I mean, I mentioned Guy Branston there. Guy Branston was kind of his centre-half partner for a full season. And that was tough for Mark because Brano's a larger than life character, and comments would get made and banter as you would expect at a football pitch. And Mark was the young guy, and Brano was having a really, really good season. And Mark took a bit of stick off him. And he just kept on going, and he kept on going, and he still scored his fair share of goals, and he was still all action, albeit a lesser experienced player than what he is now. I watched him live playing for Tranmere at Exeter, might have been last season or the season before, and he was excellent. He was just exactly as I've described there. And whenever if you've got somebody who's got good delivery, if you've got somebody that can put a decent, I mean, I saw the last goal, the ball the guy put in was an absolute world. That is something that gets me excited because I used to enjoy trying to be the guy that put those kind of deliveries in. And when I saw that, I wasn't bothered about Mark's header because if he'd have missed it, he'd have been in trouble. I know the goalkeeper was injured, so maybe another day could have come for it. But what a ball! What a time! But you saw his movement. You know, Mark went round the defender. Horrendous defending. Sorry, the coach and kind of manager in me coming out there, but what their defender was doing, I'll never know. But he went round him, got it. He's just that guy in the box. In terms of character, he is a top guy. He isn't overly comfortable in social, or wasn't anyway back then. He's not overly talkative. I think I've never seen him as excited as what I did when he was interviewed after the game and he couldn't stop talking. That's very not him. When he comes down here, he tends to come around with his kids and we'll catch up and have a coffee. And he's great one-to-one like that. And he's just a genuinely good guy with a genuinely good family around him. I think I messaged you on Twitter. His dad used to put money on every game to score and first goal scorer. And most seasons he would come several £100 up, because he'd be 25, 30 to 1 for those kind of goals. So I think his dad knows him. You guys know him now. I'm sure it'd be great for you to keep hold of him next season, regardless of what division that you end up in. He'll be sought after because he's come on loan, and whenever a player goes on loan, they want to show what they're about. And it looks to me like he's done that while he's been playing up there.
He's doing incredibly well. Kevin, good to have you back. You were just talking.
My apologies.
That's all right. You were just talking to us about the demographics of sport in Montreal, where the Canadiens ice hockey, they are the cult team. They're like Notts County are in Nottingham, aren't they? The number one sports team. No one else comes near them.
Untouchable. And not to mention that we've entered the conference finals, which are the semifinals of the Stanley Cup playoffs for the first time since '93. So the town's going a little bit crazy. Police cars were flipped a few nights ago.
Were they?
Yes. It's a regular occurrence during the playoffs here.
What, they just flipped the why? Is it?
I would say it's a French-Canadian habit of flipping police cars when the Montreal Canadiens win a playoff series, pulling out trees as well.
Were the police in them at the time or not? Or
no. And then they sent in the riot police about 15 minutes later. It was quite the show.
So if we win the playoffs, Chloe, we've got to turn over a load of police cars and say that's what they do in Montreal.
I'm not sure how well that would go down.
No, don't get caught doing it, Chloe. The last time I can remember police cars being turned over after a Notts game was Notts County, Nottingham Forest in the League Cup when Martin Allen was here. And it was the night of the riots across the whole of Britain, and Canning Circus police station got wrecked about an hour after Notts lost the penalty shootout at Forest in about 2011. Because Martin Allen drove up to have a look, I remember, he told me. There you go, useless bit of information. Kevin, what do you reckon to Saturday? What's going to happen?
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Which team, if we're to divide the match into 6 15-minute periods, scores 27% of its goals in the last 15?
Nico?
Torquay have scored a lot of 90th minute goals, yeah.
If you divide, which team, Kevin?
Torquay have scored a huge amount of late winners or late equalisers.
Yes, both Notts County and Torquay. I was crunching stats before I came on today. scored 27% of their goals between the 76th and the 90th minute. I think it's going to be very, very entertaining. And I am slightly worried about this late game entertainment. And to be frank, I see it going to extra time and probably pens.
Yeah, we had Don O'Riordan, who you would know, Kev.
Yep.
Don said the same. We had him on
agree
the
with
show,
everything
and he said extra time and penalties. Chloe?
Amen.
Yeah, we've had a lot of talk, and in the office, obviously, a lot of people have said this one will go to pens, and I hate penalties. I never back anybody in penalties. Anything can happen, and especially if we're shooting into, well, it'll be one of their home stands and the fans will be there. It's never nice. And if it goes down to that last 20 minutes, like you've said it, with all the late goals, I think I'll be watching from behind my hands, to be honest, because it's not going to be enjoyable, but hopefully we come out the right end of it.
It's another serious point, and I don't know where you stand on this, Kev. This season has been very unusual. We're talking goalkeepers and clubs not naming them on the bench, which has happened quite a lot in the National League this season. So Notts had their keeper Slocum sent off after 15 minutes against Dagenham. We didn't have a replacement goalkeeper. Michael Doyle had to go in. Chesterfield didn't have a replacement keeper on the bench on Saturday. Their keeper was badly injured in something like the 55th minute and basically hobbled around, and he was proper hobbling around for the last 35 minutes of the game. And we had another match earlier in the season when the opposition goalkeeper went off. They didn't have a replacement keeper. It was both Neil Ardley and Ian Burchnall's approach not to name a goalkeeper on the bench. You're allowed 3 subs. You can make 1 additional sub in extra time. So you can use up to 4 of the 5 subs. Given playoff scenarios, penalty shootouts, potentially. If you're back in charge of Torquay or whoever now, would you put a goalkeeper on the bench or go with 5 outfield players?
We looked into this when I was managing. It's something crazy, like 2% of the time a goalkeeper will have to go off.
Yeah.
So I preferred to have one on there, but when you're talking National League squads, you'll often, your number 2 won't necessarily be a number 2. He might be a young lad that's coming through to help in training, with the idea that you might go and get someone on loan if your keeper gets injured, that type of scenario. Yeah. Most teams won't have a budget to carry 2 top keepers to fight out with each other.
We have it now. We have. Right.
Well, if you have, and you've got 2 keepers like that, then I'd be inclined to put them on the bench. Otherwise, what's the point in spending money on him in the first place? I would, if I haven't, then I would probably look at what I've got in the squad, because there's always an outfield player that fancies himself. The guy that before training starts, nicks the goalkeeper's gloves and sticks himself in goal and dives around like an idiot. Most clubs I've been at, I've got one of them. And they're actually not bad. You know, in the way the current goalkeeper is anyway, a lot of it, you know, the vast amount of goalkeeping is done with your feet. So there's no major issue with the stuff that's going to be going on there. With 5 subs, you're only ever going to use, like you say, 3 or 4 of them of the outfield players. So personally, I like the safety net of having one on there if I know they're of a top level to come on. If I've paid money on a number 2 who's supposed to be fighting it out with mine in number 1, then I would have him on. If I've not got total confidence in my number 2 goalkeeper, then I'll stick myself an extra attacker on there, because, you know, they're the ones, they're your money makers. They're the guys that you need to do something special at the end of a game. If things are tight, I'd stick pace on the bench if you've got it, because when the emotion has wore off in a game like this, when the nerves have gone and all that nervous energy that's burnt off, and people will start to tire sooner than they would in a normal game, in a normal league game. If you've got somebody who's quick and you can stick them on, then it's of real advantage, I always feel. So it would very much depend on what I've got My personal preference, have one on there. Why risk it when you're only going to use 3 or 4 of your subs? But yeah, I think I've only been involved in one game where it happened. We didn't have a keeper on the bench, and Tim Sills had to go in goal away at Forest Green when I was playing for Torquay, and we won that game. And he'll claim that he did enough to put the guy off taking a penalty against him. He kicked it wide, but he'll always claim he had something to do with that. I'm not convinced, but it was perfectly okay. Your defenders become certainly a higher sense of make sure that no one gets any shots off. So yeah, an interesting one, but incredibly rare. Not something I'd overly worry about either way.
Yeah, it's interesting because the professionals' viewpoint, and Dom was not dissimilar to yourself. You ask fans, I mean, out of our 50 games this season, or 54, 55, if you add everything up, we've had 3 games where either ourselves or the opposition have had a goalkeeper affected by it. And in those 3 games, neither side have had a replacement keeper. So statistically, it's a lot more than 2%. And you would have thought, having had 2, there's no way you would have then have had a third instance where you could have used a keeper, i.e., which was what happened to Chesterfield. And I think virtually all fans say, "Oh, you've got to have a replacement keeper." But the view from yourselves, while there might be a preference, it's not such a big deal. Like if you did a poll of Notts fans now, 99.9%, you've got to have a keeper. How can you possibly run the risk? It's an interesting one.
Not as big it's probably heightened because of what you've just said there. You've been involved with 3 games out of your 50 odd. There will be most of the teams in the league where it hasn't happened once.
Exactly.
So they have that conversation that it'd be a totally different outcome. It just becomes impassioned when you've witnessed it and you've been a part of it. And I'm sure Chesterfield wish they've had a keeper on there now, but yeah, it's not as big a deal. I don't think, really.
All right. But both teams will finish with outfield players in goal on Saturday. We'll see. Sam Draper, Saturday's impossible to predict. However, I'm quietly confident there could be more pressure on Torquay, with them narrowly missing out on automatic. Paul Smith, we all more or less know what team will be picked, injuries notwithstanding, given there might be extra time and penalties, who will be on your bench and why. Wayne Wilkins, I'm more confident with the Torquay game than the he puts Chester Furlough match rather than Chesterfield because of playing styles. The only doubt I have is that we've been needing to score 3 in order to win, as we've been conceding 2 goals in matches recently. I think the view would be, Chloe, we're going to need, this was certainly what Don was saying, Don O'Riordan, on Monday night. We're going to need to tighten up at the back because Torquay clearly are going to pose quite a few offensive threats. And we did live by the seat of our pants a little bit in the second half, having already conceded 2 goals, didn't we?
Yeah, definitely. We know what happened last time. We went 2-0 up, thought we were breezing it, and then 2 late goals, and that was that. But going back to the whole goalkeeper thing as well, it really, for me, depends on injuries. Ellis went through the wars on Saturday. He said himself he didn't think he had a great game defensively. But, when it came to that last 5 minutes of added time, that ball was not going past that man. He was going to do anything to make sure that ball was not going in the back of the net. He must have headed it out for a throw-in 3 times in a row. And it depends massively on injuries. If we lose Reeves, because obviously he looked like he was getting a bit of attention on the pitch after the game. I also think we missed Jim O'Brien on Saturday, and that's another injury. So depending on injury, for me, depends whether you're putting a goalkeeper on the bench. Because if you're going to put somebody that hasn't really had a game all season on the bench, you may as well have a keeper there. And like you say, the likelihood is that, touch wood, that nothing will happen to Sam Slocum because we'll need him. But yeah, tighten up at the back. But it just shows you as well, with the Chesterfield keeper being injured as well, I think that they tightened up their defence because we didn't end up getting many shots off. And I know a lot of people in the crowd were saying, just have a go from anywhere, just because if he can't, well, I saw during the match, actually, he went out and the ball was going to go out for a corner and he hobbled to go and get it and it still went out for a corner because he couldn't get there. So all the Notts fans were saying, just shoot from anywhere. And then in Ian's interview afterwards, he was like, well, we didn't want to change our game, but I think that the Chesterfield defence tightened up massively as soon as they knew their keeper was injured. And we've just got to do the same thing, whether Slocum's injured or not. Tighten up, stop balls going into the box from the wing backs. And then that's all you can do, really. Head everything, kick everything away, and then just hope you'll be on the other end. And the only thing is, as well, I think we need to be careful on the break as well. On Saturday, I think we had quite a lot of the ball, especially first half. And our chances, it looked like being all of us. And then within a split second, they're at the other end of the pitch and scored. So we do need to be really careful because we like to get forward. Ian's tactics are everybody forward. And for a lot of the game when we were attacking, the only defender back was Chickson. And I think we've got to be careful doing that because we've seen we get hit on the counter attack and it can be awful. So yeah, tighten up and hope something falls for us in the game.
Kevin, we're having a heat wave over in England at the minute, and it looks pretty warm where you are at the minute. Are you okay there?
It's 42 degrees with the humidex, and my wife is on a conference call inside. So I'm doing this outside, and it's quite warm indeed.
How hot did you say it was?
42 Celsius with the humidex.
42? Crikey, that's like a desert, isn't it? Crikey.
It's insane.
Yeah?
Yes.
Right, well, okay, well, keep yourself...
And I've been banished.
Keep yourself hydrated.
I'm doing that. I should say that high line that Ian was pushing in the last game, Nathan Tyson has slowed down quite a bit over the years, and that's one of the things that scares me about this Saturday, as Chloe was saying. If we keep maintaining the line that high, even if we're protecting a lead, that could be quite dangerous. If Tyson had chipped Slocum instead of taking a shot at ground level, the outcome could have been quite different this past Saturday, and that's something that worries me coming forward, even though I love the style of attacking football that Ian's putting forth.
Yeah, I mean, my view would be we have to defend 100% better than last week, whilst we will get beat. But if you remember when we last went down to Torquay, it's probably for 75 minutes as good a performance as we've done, and we were in control really. And if memory serves, your pal Nico, Mr. Ellis, had the old Terry Butcher and had the bandage round his head. There was blood and claret everywhere, and
he loves that. He loves that. Yeah, don't get sucked in with that. He does that regularly.
And I think Torquay's centre forward was only on the pitch for about 8 minutes and got sent off for the ref called 2 elbows on him. And there's a fair bit of claret, to be fair to him. But then again, you can't be a proper centre half with about a few broken noses, cheekbones, and all the rest of it, can you?
No, he never had a modelling career to worry about in the first place, so he'll be fine.
You live down in the West Country. I mean, have you been in touch much with Torquay fans? What sort of mood do you detect among their fan base?
I haven't come across much this week in the build up to the game. The general thing is, I think, what Kevin said earlier about the last minute goals. I think they've thrived on this. They've got some experienced players, and they've thrived on this kind of, I suppose, identity of nicking late goals and being a pain in the arse and being a bit nasty and being the team that no one wants to play and that kind of thing. They've quite enjoyed that. I can't use the word that I've seen used regularly on Twitter because I never know who's watching this thing. But they've gone onto that kind of no one likes us, we don't care type of vibe. And there's a power to that. There's definitely some of the best teams I've been involved in, that siege mentality, everyone's against us, etc. I like that. I liked it as a player. Chloe talked about being the underdog. I like being the underdog. I like being no one likes us. I like being unpopular in that sense. I think there's a real power to that, and it's a good one as a manager. It's a real nice one. You can rally players up really quite nicely when it's genuine. It has to be authentic. It has to be real. But if you're Torquay, one of the bigger clubs in the division, you keep nicking last minute goals. You've got someone like Danny Wright who's been playing up top who can wind up anybody. It fits their narrative. It fits quite nicely. So that's the general vibe that I've picked from them this season. But yeah, it's been a crazy season for them because they were running away with the league and then completely fell apart and then nearly did it again. So Torquay, I think like most clubs, being a fan of any football club is always roller coaster throughout the whole season. It'd be boring otherwise.
What do you think are their main offensive threats? The reason I ask is that Notts went on a very successful unbeaten run. We got a small fullback, Dion Kelly Evans, 5'5" little terrier, and he was very unfortunate to be left out of the last two games because we were playing sides. I think it was Bromley, the first game he was left out for. Got 6'3", 6'4", long throws being chucked in from all over the pitch, everything put into the box. So Notts took a view that they'd go with a bit more height in the side. What's going to be Torquay's main weapons against Notts, do you think, on Saturday? Are they going to be pump it into the box? Is it going to be pace, combination of both?
Well, if they're all fit, a combination. The games that I've seen this season, I've commented. Danny Wright is a battering ram and a clever one. He's a good player. He's in good physical condition, or has been. He's picked up these injuries which have hurt Torquay towards the end of the season. But if he's fit, he's a handful. If he's half fit, he's a handful. Whitfield out on the wing, quick, intelligent, outstanding delivery into the box. So if you've got those two, there's an obvious threat linking up between them. They've got the lad Armani Little, if he's fit, who is absolutely outstanding set play delivery and a real threat from direct set plays. And I'd like to see the stats on where most of those late goals have come from, because I would imagine it would be sustained pressure and balls getting put in or second phase set plays that have been defended. They've got threats everywhere. They've got experience and they've got youth and pace. So if they've got a full squad to pick from, they're a very, very good team that have got a lot of different ways of beating you. It'd be really interesting. I mean, I've seen one of the things on the chat that came up, somebody asking about how I'd set up, and to beat Notts in the way that this manager likes to try and play, I'd be all out press. I'd be all out in your face, go and hit you high, try and win the game early. I'd back that having fans in there might be able to push me that little bit longer. I commentated in the FA Cup when they got beat by Crawley 6-5 after extra time. It was an absolutely mental game. But in the first 40 minutes, it was one of the best pressing performances I've seen. They went up early because Crawley were a passing team. They wanted to play out the back. They wanted to move the ball. And Torquay absolutely destroyed them for 40 minutes. They just got in the faces, didn't allow them to play, hit them on the press and the counter press and got the ball high. And it was at that point, again, what do we know? If you'd have kind of cut in and said, what do you think the score's going to be to me after half an hour, I'd have said 5-0 Torquay. I mean, it was absolute. The one thing being that if, as they did, they slipped up and let Crawley back in, you can't press for 90 minutes and it's probably going to be warm. And they've not played for a couple of weeks. So there's factors to put in there. But I would go early, go hard and press high against Notts and trust that we could get that early advantage, I think, in that sense.
Boots on the other side. How do you beat Torquay?
I think you get at them with pace. I think that is probably the most obvious thing to say. When you ask those questions, you try and think of something intelligent. The fact is, any team, but particularly Torquay, depending on what they put out, they've got some big boys at the back, and they've got people like Dean Moxey, who is a fantastic player, but he's not as quick as he was. And so you've got guys like that. So it move the ball quick. Any team that comes to press you, you've got to move it quick. Move it quick, get it out wide, get some pace going at their back line, and then look to keep the ball like Notts will, but keep it in their half. Keep them away from your goal. Again, stupidly obvious thing to say, but a lot of footballing teams in the lower leagues get the ball at the back and pass it 15 times across their own back four. So when they do give it away, which inevitably will happen, they're right next to their own goal. They're only a one decent pass away from conceding. Find a way to get the ball into Torquay's half as quickly as you can with quality, and then keep it moving up there and grind them down with possession, but hit them with pace when you can.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly that will be one of the differences with the way Ian has set teams up and Neil. Notts do move things forward with a lot more purpose, and there aren't now 15 passes across the back line. Kevin, crikey, very, very hot for you there. Kyle Wotton, so back to his goal-scoring ways, couldn't be better timed, yeah?
Beautiful thing. Given how well he's been doing on these tap-ins that he's been getting from corners, as Kevin was saying, you know, I would love to see Notts integrate a more significant degree of wing play into what they're going to do on Saturday to get pace up the wings and give service to Kyle and even Ruben in the box. And I think that could be a way that we could potentially overwhelm the Torquay defense, aside from the pace that Kevin was mentioning.
Is it going to be I'm not exactly sure when the Canadians are playing their next game. Is it going to be a Canadians and a Magpies double celebration this weekend, do you think?
No, because we swept the Winnipeg Jets in 4 out of 7, so I think we're off for at least a week. The Canadians.
Okay. Well, okay. So what about the Canadians winning the Stanley Cup? Yeah, more of my ice hockey knowledge there, Nico. And Notts getting back into the EFL. What are the odds on that one, Kev?
I would much prefer to see Notts get back up than see Montreal win a Stanley Cup, even though the last time it happened was 92-93. As for odds, Montreal qualified as the worst team to make the playoffs in the round of 16. Notts were 5th. So statistically speaking, Notts are a better team. And as I told you, they're a team of destiny.
I love you just throw that in there, a team of destiny. I love it. Chloe, extra time and pens, do you think, or not?
I really hope not. I really, really, really hope not, because I don't want to drag it out anymore. And if we have to play that extra half an hour, that's not then good for the final if we do get through it, because we need to keep the injuries low and give people a rest for a bit. So it's not going to be helpful for either team to have extra time and penalties. Everyone's going to want it wrapped up before, but we talk about all these late goals, so God knows what's going to happen. But yeah, we've seen from both perspectives of Notts, if we push teams that play it through the back four, like Kev was saying earlier, that's how we scored against Chesterfield. Ruben just kept up, pushed the high line, and then nicked it off them right next to their goal. But we've seen the exact same happen to us in the opposite direction. Balls over the top. Ellis got caught out a few times with the balls over the top to Tyson, and actually he was playing them onside every time. It was hard to tell at the match whether they was off or wrong because it happened so quickly, but I've rewatched the match a couple of times now, and every time he was onside. So we've got to be careful. But yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of box to box, and I think Miller's going to play an exceptional role, and he's going to be vitally important, getting the ball to him down the wings, playing Ruben, like you say, playing Wotton in. So it's a really difficult one to see which way it's going to go, but we've just got to wait and see now.
In the other game, Nick, I don't know how much you've been following it on the National League. Stockport and Tranmere. I had Bromley having sneaked into the playoffs to win at Hartlepool, and it shows you what I know. They were 3-0 down after about 35 minutes. Well, they did get it back to 3-2, didn't they? But you've got 4, I think, very strong, very competitive teams, haven't you? Stockport, splashed the cash for Paddy Madden. Hartlepool under Dave Challoner are a very well organised, well drilled side. You can genuinely make a case for any one of these 4 to win it at Ashton Gate a week on Sunday.
Is there a question there?
I was going to agree with you and then say, well, actually, I think Notts will win it by a street. No, but I mean, if you were compiling the odds, it's I would say it's very, very tight across the board. You can make a strong case for every one of these 4 teams to win it.
No, absolutely. I think you look at the form going into the playoffs is one for me. So I think Stockport, I know they had a little blip where they could have almost snuck the league, and then they fell off a little bit. I think they're going to have, I'm not sure exactly how it's worked out fan-wise, but I imagine they'll be allowed kind of 4,000 or 5,000 in at their place for that. I think when you get to those numbers and that kind of noise when you're in a good place already, I think that might help them. Hartlepool, I would hate to bet on them because they seem like one of those teams that can beat anybody, but they've also had some horror results along the way as well. The most consistent team will get there. I would strangely I would pick Stockport from the other one. I think they'll get through that one. If I was predicting the game on Saturday with the Torquay Knots, I mean, I disagree with the extra time and pens. My take on it is going to be it's supposed to be quite hot and muggy here, so I'm expecting a tight game up until the last 15 minutes. One team to be a goal up, and the other team having to push harder than they'd like to as they tire, and the other team to go and nick a second. So I'm going to say within. I'm not going to pick either way, but I'm going to say more than a single goal within 90 minutes is where I'm going.
Okay, so you don't see the extra time and penalties.
I think that the conditions and all the stuff that comes into it, I think it's going to be more than one goal and within the 90.
You say warm and muggy in Torquay. It can't be any warmer and muggier than your back garden, Kevin, at the minute in Montreal, can it?
I think I'd move if it got any warmer.
So 7 o'clock, you'll be up watching it in bed. Come 9 o'clock, will you be celebrating a Knots victory into the final?
Yes. Although I, unlike Kevin, have a feeling that what's actually going to happen is that one of the two teams is going to tie it up in the last 15 minutes, send us to extra time at pens, and if it gets to pens, that's where I worry. For one, Slocum's not the greatest penalty stopper, and for two, I don't think any civilized sporting event should be decided by penalties, but that's just me. But I see a equalizer in the last 15 minutes and that extra time. I favor Knots in extra time. If it goes to penalties, it's a coin toss for me.
I mean, personally, Chloe, I think Knots have got to defend much, much better, whilst they will get beat. Now, personally, I think they will. But for me, there's some huge decisions to be made in terms of personnel. We actually took one of our main established centre halves off at half time last week, Kev. Connor Rawlinson, 6'3", strong centre, didn't play well in the first half. Subbed him. Ian will do subs early. I'm a big fan of Dion Kelly Evans, as you know, Chloe, at right back. Since he's been dropped for the last 2 games, we've let a few goals in. What do you reckon?
Well, as you know, us two have always been big Dion fans, and all season long, I kind of get where the decisions have come from, leaving him out. They've not left him out performance-wise. They've literally left him out because the opposition's had a lot of big bodies in there. But for me, I keep it as much as I like Rawlinson, I keep it as the 3 that have been playing well. So Brindley, Chickson and Ellis, if he's fit. And then for me, it'd have to be Dion, to be perfectly honest. But it's a difficult one when you're not seeing them training. But all I can say is what I've seen on the pitch. And I think we've played better when Dion's been there. And that's why, for me, he was my player of the season. But it's a difficult one either way. And I just hope it is wrapped up within the 90.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not quite sure. We'll all cope with extra time and penalties. Kev, closing comments. Presumably, in much the same way as we in Nottingham talk about how much it means to get back into the Football League, the world's oldest club. We've never been out of it till 2 years ago. Presumably with the challenges Torquay have faced in terms of dropping down a division below and coming back. For the whole of the region, this must be a massive deal for them. This must be a massive deal.
Yeah, I can only go off personal experience when I was in the playoffs, exactly the same as this. It's massive. When we did go up, we had the open top bus ride, and there were thousands and thousands. I mean, it was probably the best part of promotion. There were thousands of people lining the streets to be a part of it. It is massive down here. It's a big football club. It has got, like a lot of these clubs, it's got a rich history. The fans have been through a huge amount. It's going to be big. It's such a shame that we can't have two sets of fans in there. It would be amazing to have a packed place, both sets of fans, the atmosphere that brings, the rivalry that comes with that. But yeah, it's going to be a massive game, I know, for both clubs. It's going to be a massive reward, but you're still not there. So I think for me, the big thing is making sure my players keep their mind on the only thing that they can affect, which is going to be this game on Saturday and what they do to prepare for that. You've mentioned Ashton Gate a couple of times. I wouldn't want to mention that word. I wouldn't want to be thinking about that. I would want them totally focused on this is your cup final for now, as cliched as what that might be, because there's no point thinking about something that you've got no say over just yet.
Okay, Kevin, final thoughts?
Something hasn't been brought up in the pod yet. The remarkable turnaround since Maurice Ross was fired and Michael Doyle became the assistant manager. I think Doyle has an important role to play in terms of transmitting the passion, the history, and the tactical setup to the team. And I really do think that Doyle's leadership on the pitch is going to matter enormously Saturday in terms of keeping the lads together, maintaining discipline, maintaining passion, and maintaining speed. So I think that's just an intangible that we have to take into consideration.
Okay. Final thoughts, Chloe?
I can't say as though I'm looking forward to it, to be perfectly honest. It's just going to be one of them. And like you say, you've got to focus on one game at a time, and they know we'll all be watching. And like you say, one game at a time. And then next Sunday, you just hope. And that's all you can do up till now. It's going to be a very, very tight game. And yeah, somebody's going to tip it, whether that's in the 90 minutes, whether that's penalties. And like you say, there are two sets of fans, well, actually four sets of fans if you look at it from both semi-final games, that just want to get there, that it means a lot to all of them. And just from a personal perspective, if we go up, touch wood, this season, this will be kind of the best that I've ever seen them. I've never seen them win anything for the past 10 years. So this will top it off for me.
Nico's goal's been the highlight of the last 20 years of the title season under Munto.
So no pressure at all, but we haven't won anything for a long time. So yeah, it'd be great to be back and kind of regain our title from Forest a little bit. That'll be a nice added bonus.
One thing we've tried to do, I'm going to break the rule here for you, Nico, because you're a good, you're good, and we all value your opinions, and I will be genuinely interested in your insight. So for the past 6-7 weeks, we've just banged the drum solely. And I've, 7 weeks ago, we're good enough to get in the playoffs and everyone laughs everyone out of court and all the rest of it. Gradually, we've got the momentum. There's now a mood among a not insignificant section of the fans. Doesn't really matter if we go up. We're finishing the season well. We're bound to do well next year, even if we don't go up this year. Talk to me about, does momentum carry on? So for a moment, let's say Notts don't go up. How much of these last 6 weeks counts next season, or doesn't it? In your experience?
If you've got a new manager who wants to put his stamp on things and you don't get the job done and you don't go up, that probably means turnover of players. Turnover of players means that it means absolutely nothing. you've got a whole different group of guys that are going to be looking at learning your style, your language, how you are as a manager, as a football club, moving to the area, whatever it might be. So I think if you don't do it and there's a big turnover, it's not to say that you won't be successful next season. It's just to say that I don't think that's got anything to do with momentum. It's probably got more to do with the manager and how well he sets up his pre-season, how well he transmits his ideas, how well he puts forward, how things should be done in his mind, and how well the players take to that, take to him, take to the task ahead. If the same group of lads stay about, then probably a little bit of the momentum carries over, because you control the narrative as the manager. Look, lads, look how strong we were going into the end of that season. Look how well we did. Forget the fact that we didn't go up. That was a one-off game. Nothing to worry about. This is our year. You've got a backlog of information that those players already know. You're not teaching anybody anything new. You're probably just trying to refine and move a few things about, bring in the odd player that you want to make a real big difference in whatever area you feel it's really needed. I think, it's the thing about every off season is every club in the country thinks they're going up the following year.
Yeah.
Every manager thinks they're going up. Every player thinks they're going up. Everybody, whether you've got financial riches and every resource you could ever want, or whether you're a massive great underdog, I think somebody like Morecambe this season in League Two, every single person who's not at Morecambe at the start of this season would have said they're likely to get relegated. Every person in the Morecambe dressing room would have been talking about how we're going to surprise a few this year, and they did. So I think it's one of those very much intangible things. Keep the group together. Yeah, a little bit of momentum will carry over. My first season when we got promoted with Torquay into League Two, we were an absolute disaster when we first got in there. We didn't get up to speed with League Two. A lot of the old guard got moved on. A lot of new players came in. We struggled. Last 6 games of the season, we didn't concede a goal. We've talked about that on the podcast before, because it was your season and the 0-0 at the end.
We have a guard of honour to fish.
Exactly. There you go. You see, yeah, I don't like to talk about that. And then we went into the next season and didn't concede for another 4 games. Because we had a very similar, the squad was settled. We knew what was expected. We now knew the level. We knew everything we needed to know to continue that and use that momentum. And we all felt great because of how we'd finished the season. So there can be an element to it, but a lot will depend on how many stay, how many go, manager's thoughts. For all you know right now, the manager might be playing a style. I know he's got an identity and he's got a way that he wants to play, but might be limited in some ways by the players that he's got there. So he's having to do something that he doesn't necessarily want to. If the shackles are off and he's got a budget and he can get rid of a few and bring some in, there might be parts of the game that he wants to do differently. And that could be a great thing, or it could fall flat on its face. It'll come down to the manager, the recruitment, the players, etc.
It's very interesting, that, Kev. That's very, very, very insightful, because I think when you look at the teams that have been in the top 6 or top 7 this year, there's about 5 of them were all in the bottom 8 or 9 last year. Sutton were near the bottom last year. Wrexham were, Torquay. Yeah, there's Notts really have been the most consistent team in this top 6 or 7 or 8. Notts beat Barnet in the playoffs last year. So I'm just interested as to how much, if we weren't to make it, there's going to be a weight of expectation.
But there's very little in the lower leagues, particularly in the National League. Nobody signs a 3-year contract, so you don't have the level of continuation and consistency that you do in the Premier League. And that, again, it can be a good thing, it can be a bad thing. But if you get the right players in the door and you tie them down and you work with them over a period of time, they know what's expected. They know the league, they know the standard, they know the opposition. They know what works. They know what doesn't. They know what the manager likes. They know what not to do. So they gain a level of experience over time. Now, that's not exciting for fans. It's not overly exciting for managers in a lot of ways, because they know that their time could end after one bad month. So you then get a huge amount of turnover of players. And sometimes you can be, there's an art to recruitment, of course. There's an art to putting a group of players together and gelling them in a way. There's an art to management. That's why not everybody does it. But it's a bit of lottery at times when you break a team up completely and bring a load of other players in. You look now, the retained lists are going out, and there's a load of players losing the jobs, and there's a load of players not getting other contracts. And I'm sure that the outlook next season will be very different. I would be, again, drilling home that this is your opportunity. To get anything else, this is your opportunity. Because if you want to start looking in the crystal ball, Wrexham are probably going to have more money than they know what to do with next season with what's going on. Southend coming down are going to be a really big club at that level. Grimsby coming down are going to be a massive club at that level. So if you go down the route of don't worry, momentum will take us there, then it doesn't take long for you to find yourself, lower mid-table. Oh my God, what's gone wrong? And then you're right back to questioning decisions, manager, players, etc. And like a lot of clubs will tell you don't want to get stuck in this league for long.
That is very, very good. And I wholeheartedly agree with just about every word you've said there. But we're going to focus. We're going to focus on the playoffs as we have done for a little while now. We're still in them, and hopefully we'll still be in them next week. Thank you to Kevin in Montreal. We're going to let you get back inside and have about 14 litres of water.
Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure to have you on. We shall get you on again when hopefully you're not confined to outside into 42 degrees. Chloe, good to have you on again.
Yeah, thanks for having me again, Paul.
No problem. I hope you are very, 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 very busy from 9 o'clock Sunday morning, flogging them. Ashton Gate.
Not a lot of people can say they want to go back to work, but for me, if I'm back at work, it means we've got there. So I hope next week I'll be there.
14-hour days for you, I hope, next week, Chloe.
Oh, it will be.
Nico, as well, brilliant. All the Notts fans, A, love you for the goal, but B, that we all get loads of comments about how insightful. To be honest, the only Notts-related person that gives you any stick is Bish. Other than that,
Stal would if he was watching tonight. He's coming down tomorrow, so I might go and catch up with him as well. So
you're going to catch up? Good. That's excellent. Yeah, he's a very popular pundit with us. Give him our regards if you're going to see him before we do. Guys, thank you ever so much indeed for your time, and hopefully we will all be back next week looking ahead to Ashton Gate. Bye.